Hi, everyone. Hello. Hello. Hi. I'm like, oh, we're like, it's like the theater in the round. Um, Hi, my name is Joanna Belfer, and I'm the owner of Bel Canto Books here at the Hangout. And I am super delighted to see so many of you folks here with us tonight. So I want to make sure, and I'm going to say it out loud so that somebody reminds me, because I often forget this. For a lot of our authors, this is one of their few in-person events. And so we'd love to take a group photo before the end of the night. So please don't, when we're done, we'll take the group photo. And if you have your books, it's always nice to proudly display them so we can show them in the photo. So just, that's an FYI. We already talked about where the bathroom is. That's very, I'm always very like, where's the bathroom? I know folks are already getting drinks. It's Wine Wednesday, so feel free to, if you want to get up. We will be open for about an hour after the event, or after we technically close at 7. So we will have some time at the end if you want to continue shopping or just hanging out. We'll do a conversation with our 4 authors, and then we'll do a book signing afterwards, so you guys can just line up and get your book signed. And I did just replenish the stash of books outside, so if for some reason there was something that you missed and you're like, hopefully we should have more books for you. And if not, you can always see me. And people are already asking me, where is Susan and Suzanne's books? Their forthcoming books. They're forthcoming, which means they're coming. So September and October. So just pre-order with us or wherever you shop with your indies, and we will get started. Yay! So I will go ahead and just do a quick introduction, and I'm going to turn it over to our wonderful authors. So I'm going to start from here and work my way down. Susan Lee has had a lifetime of careers, from bartender to network engineer to HR executive at some of today's most successful companies. But one thing has always been clear throughout: she was born to be a storyteller. And she has channeled her myriad of experiences into her writing of lighthearted, quirky novels about the oftentimes hilarious human condition, and love, always love. She currently lives in Southern California, yay, fighting her inner New Yorker from breaking free too often, with a pack of 3 feisty chihuahuas and a too hearty obsession with K-pop and K-dramas. Welcome, Susan. And Susan's book is Soulmates, which is coming out in September. Jayci Lee writes poignant, sexy, and laugh-out-loud romance every free second she can scavenge, and is semi-retired from her 15-year career as a defense litigator. Wow. She loves food, wine, and traveling, and incidentally, so do her characters, in books like The Dating Dare and A Sweet Mess, and now Booked on a Feeling. Jayci lives in Southern California with her tall, dark, and handsome husband, 2 amazing boys with boundless energy, and a fluffy rescue whose cuteness is a major distraction. Welcome, Jayci. Jennifer J. Chow is the Lefty Award-nominated author of the Sassy Cat Mysteries and the LA Night Market Mysteries. The first in the Sassy Cat series, Mimi Lee Gets a Clue, was selected as a Pop Sugar Best Summer Beach Read and was one of BuzzFeed's top 5 books by AAPI authors. She currently serves as Vice President on the National Board of Sisters in Crime and is active in Crime Writers of Color. Welcome. And last but not least, we have Suzanne Park. She is a Korean-American writer who was born and raised in Tennessee. In her former life as a stand-up comedian, Suzanne appeared on BET's Coming to the Stage. She was the finalist of the Seattle Sierra Mist Comedy Competition and was a semifinalist in NBC's Stand Up for Diversity Showcase in San Francisco. She's graduated from Columbia University and received an MBA degree from UCLA. You guys are all like fancy. Jeez. Her books have been I know, seriously. They're like, yes, you can be a writer, but also get this degree. Also be an accountant. Please be a lawyer. Her books have been featured in Best of lists at NPR, Pop Sugar, Real Simple, Country Living, Bustle, BuzzFeed, Marie Claire, Parade, Shondaland, and The Today Show. Welcome, Suzanne. And welcome to all of our authors. I will turn it over to, they're each going to say a little bit about their new book, and then we'll have a conversation. And then if you have questions, just feel free to save them till the end, and we will get to all the questions.
Thank you, everyone, for showing up. I just drove up from San Diego. I love coming here. I've come for Alicia's event before. It's one of my favorite bookstores. I love this backyard area. I feel like we're all just chilling. I wish there was a barbecue. Sorry, I wouldn't mind a barbecue right about now. But we're going to all introduce ourselves and our books, and then I'll ask a couple questions, and then we'll open up to the audience. So my name is Susan Lee, and my book is called Soulmates. I know some people are tempted to call it SEOULMATES, but it is Soulmates. It's a little pun, har, har, har. But Seoul is the capital of Korea. It's about two Korean American teenagers that were childhood best friends, had a falling out to become enemies, and then reunite to become lovers. No, I'm just kidding. So, and one of them happens to come back. He is now one of the hottest K-drama stars in Korea. And the other one, the girl who stayed in Southern California, recently gets dumped by her non-Korean boyfriend for not loving K-dramas and K-pop. So there's a lot of little like nudges to fandom, and if you love BTS, 17, Crash Landing on You. There's a lot, like Elisa's dad loves the K-dramas, but there's a lot of little nudges. But you don't have to love K-dramas to love this book. It is, I think, super sweet. I think I'm hilarious. And there's lots of friendship and found family and forgiveness. And yeah, so it comes out September 20th. You can order it here from Bel Canto to get a signed, personalized pre-order with some goodies if you like. And while you're here, I brought some swag. There's little bags over there. You can welcome to grab one. And then, yeah, off to Jayci.
Hi, I'm Jayci Lee. So, small town, friends to lovers, bookstore revamp.
Perfect.
Do I need to say more? It's about two best friends. One is an overachieving attorney, and her best friend who feels like he's an underachiever and not good enough for her. He's been in love with her for 20 years, but has been pining, secretly, a lot of pining and suffering, and I like to do that to my heroes. And she is burnt out. She has a panic attack and passes out during her trial, and decides to visit him in small town Weldon to recuperate for 3 weeks. And she decides that she wants to help a friend out and renovate a failing bookstore, and enlists the help of her best friend Jack, and you know, hidden in the stacks, I'm gonna read the back. But they find out that they are more than friends, and it's worth risking everything for.
Dun, dun, dun. Yes.
Hi, I'm Jennifer J. Chow, and mine is a culinary cozy mystery. So the narrator is Yale Yi. She is a bookish young woman who is unfortunately let go of her bookstore job at a local bookstore called the Literary Narnia when it opens up. So she's kind of out of a job, and her dad owns a dim sum restaurant. And he's like, well, I have a food stall coming up at the local night market, and it'd be great if you could run it for the weekend. But the only catch is her cousin, an estranged cousin from Hong Kong, is flying in, and the dad thinks it's a great idea for them to connect and run the food stall together. They have totally opposite personalities. Her cousin Celine is just very extroverted, into the glitz and the glamour. So her ideal, prop for the night market is to bring these bedazzled chef jackets to the night market. And then Yale is like, I'm bringing cookbooks because we need food. So they're trying to run this food stall together. And they also serve bubble tea at the food stall. So that's why the book's called Death by Bubble Tea, because one of their customers winds up dead after drinking their bubble tea. So they have to figure out, it's not them, so they have to figure out who actually did it. Oh, and it's a culinary cozy, so there are a couple recipes in the back.
Hi, everybody. Suzanne Park. The book, my most recent book is So We Meet Again. That book, I like to say, is about food, family, finding yourself, and falling in love. And it features a Korean American protagonist named Jayci Kim, and she works in finance, and she's laid off on Zoom. And so, yes, grown. That actually happened to a friend of mine, which is how I got the idea. But she moves back home with her, moves back to her childhood house with her family, and so she's now living in her childhood bedroom. Her mom and dad are there, and she decides to rekindle this cooking show, Korean cooking show that she once had in college. And it's doing okay, but then when her mom walks on and does a cameo, it really takes off. So then she has to decide, am I going to continue this business with my mom, or do I try to go off on my own? At the same time, she runs into her childhood nemesis, Daniel Choi, who she meets at a Asian grocery store, and they hate each other. But you'll have to read the book to find out what happens. And then I have another book coming out. It's a young adult book. It's coming out this October. It's a holiday book, holiday themed. And that one is about two Asian American teenagers who work at a suburban mall. So it's a holiday romance centered in the mall. And it features a Korean American protagonist. Her name is Chloe Kwan, and she is the Santa's elf photographer. And her nemesis is Peter Lee, and he works at the virtual reality ultimate North Pole extravaganza right next door. Needless to say, they also hate each other. But and their parents own rival food court restaurants. One is Chinese and one is Korean, and they also hate each other. So they find out, though, that the mall is going to close and be shut down and destructed for condos. So they have to band together to save the mall. And so that comes out in October 4th.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay, before we start, I want to ask Jen, can you define for us what a cozy mystery is?
You can't hear me. So basically, it's like a whodunit puzzle. And if you're thinking like Agatha Christie or Murder, She Wrote, that's kind of the type of story. Someone called it like an adult Nancy Drew in a review. So what cozy mysteries are defined by are kind of like the missing elements. So there's, unfortunately, there's not sex on the page, there's no violence, and there's probably like no swearing. So it's pretty like clean read. And a lot of times it's kind of an intergenerational read, so I'll have like, like the mothers and children read it, or the grandparents and the child can read it together. So it's kind of like that.
Do they have romance though, or they tend to?
Some of them do,
okay.
Some of them don't. Mm-hmm.
You're a bunch of romance writers.
So the Sassy Cat definitely has romance, and this one, you're like not really sure. There might be a hint.
Gotcha. Awesome. So I'm going to ask the panel of authors about their start and getting into writing, but I want to share, because this will kind of lead into this question. So I never go on my Goodreads page, but if you follow me on Instagram, today I went on my page to look for a data point, and there was a question in my book that said, great, is there a book just like this? My book is two Korean American teenagers, and the question was, is there a book just like this but with a white heroine? And so I just thought that was such an interesting question, but then not surprising in this day and age of kind of what's happening in the world today. So I want to ask our diverse group of panelists, what got you into writing? And in that kind of getting you into writing, did you feel a responsibility to show a level of representation that didn't really exist in books a couple years ago, even just a couple years ago?
And the answer is yes. I wanted to change the world for the better for my sons. I have two boys, Korean American, and they are Korean Americans, Asian Americans are grossly underrepresented, exotified, and just misunderstood in so many ways. And I wanted the world that they live in to be better than the world that I grew up in, where I could never imagine a Korean American main character in a romance that was unheard of. I thought we could only be sidekicks, and the sad thing is that I never questioned that. I thought that is the way it is. But once I had children, I decided, no, they're going to be the main characters. They'll know that they could shine. And by sharing my stories, I'm not going to get didactic and preach and tell people to accept us, right? It doesn't work that way. But by sharing the laughter and joy and love that a rom-com presents to the readers, I'm hoping that we'll just ease into their psyche as part of the norm, part of the fabric of America. Korean Americans are Americans, Asian Americans are Americans, instead of the constant othering or, where did you really come from? Like we're from Mars. So, yeah, I do want to make a change in my little way for my voice.
So for me, I grew up and I read a lot of Agatha Christie, and all the mystery books that I read did not have, well, almost all the books I read did not have Asian main characters. And so I think part of why I write is to have that representation, but more as a natural part of me as a writer to reflect back on the page. So I think that it's like I want to make a message, but it's more also because that's how I've been influenced and that's what comes out when I write. And even now, so my imprint is Berkeley from Penguin Random House, and they're starting to diversify that cozy mystery genre, but I could probably count on one hand, probably, the number of actual like Asian American cozy mysteries from big publishers that are kind of out there right now. So that definitely is something I'm interested in having representation for. So in the Sassy Cat mysteries, I have the mom is Malaysian Chinese. That's the same background as my dad, who's also Chinese, grew up in Malaysia, born and raised. And then in the Night Market mysteries, it's like Hong Kong and Chinese American. My mom's also from Hong Kong, so I kind of put that in. And I think just some of the natural elements that are in there, like family and food and the way the culture like influences her and the cousin are just part of what make them more like three-dimensional as characters.
This music is very dramatic. I don't know if anybody else has noticed it. I was like, well, while you were talking, I was like, oh, there's a crescendo at the right spot. It was really fun. Oh, now it's quieter. Okay, this is a good time to just speed through. So I fashioned myself to be a storyteller, and I think I've always been that way, even though it was more of an introvert growing up. So I started out doing stand-up comedy. Oh my gosh, the music stopped. I'm sorry, I was just joking. So I did stand-up comedy for 10 years, and stand-up comedy is 90% male, and you can imagine that other 10% being other would be maybe, female, but within that just picture how small the Asian American female community would be in that space. So every time I went on stage, it was like a huge battle just to like kind of convince not just the crowd, but other comedians that, you deserved a spot there. And I remember many times that I come off the stage after a good set and they would say, oh, you were actually funny. And it was just like the way it was said and who said it, it was just so aggravating. So again, 10 years of doing that, and I just realized that at some point, I'll spare you on the long journey it took to get published, but I just thought that I would probably be able to reach more people with humor, Asian American people-centered humor, through writing and doing fiction. So that's sort of how I ended up here. But the thing that I wanted to do with my writing, and I think I do it with lots of opinions on whether it's a good thing or not, is I do include either sexism or racism or both in all of my books. So I touch upon it. I try to use humor to couch it, but I feel like that's very important to me and my whole reason for being on this earth. I think I need to make a difference that way. The secondary thing, kind of like that's important to me, is to showcase Asian American males as being very three-dimensional and not just stereotype of being the karate expert or the nerdy guy with a pocket protector. They can, I wanted to make sure that, you see them as viable, like, action, whatever it is, but just beyond the stereotypes that you see in media today. And I feel like most of my books showcase either Korean American. The most recent one, Christmas Clash, that's coming out, he's Chinese American. And I think that just doing that and my part in that will hopefully make a difference. And Susan, I'd love to know your opinion on your question.
I literally have the sun right in my face, so I'm just going to close my eyes and pretend I'm talking to myself in my bedroom. I don't know if you remember this, Jayci, but Jayci and I were at a romance writers conference, RWA. I don't even remember the year, maybe 2017 and 2019. And at the time, there was literally no Korean romance writers at all. Maybe, yeah, it was us too, but we weren't published yet. We weren't agented or published. In fact, I don't know if you remember this. We met sitting on these sofas waiting to pitch agents at an event. And at the time, there were none, zero. And then this is an adult romance, and Jayci went and literally signed 20 books. And I'm like, I'm still working on that first draft of mine for this book. But when I wrote Soulmates, this is actually my second novel. I set out to write a rom-com because my father had passed away, and I needed to find some joy. So I wanted to write a rom-com very shortly after, and I had a little bit in me thinking that, look, my Koreanness never, I didn't show my Koreanness in school or in work. My Koreanness really only showed itself at home. My parents watched K-dramas, we ate Korean food, but that was kind of where my Koreanness was centered. And when my dad passed, I thought, am I going to lose this? So when I was writing this rom-com about Korean kids and K-dramas, everything in my mind was kind of this inside joke of me putting stuff from my past and my family on page. I just didn't think anyone would get it. And as early readers started to read this book, and people were like, oh, this book is an identity book. And I'm like, what? No, it's about two kids falling in love. But I guess people got it. And not just Korean people. I think it's just any person that had kind of I think what's interesting in this day and age is you can be Korean, and there are people who love BTS but won't say a word when someone's pushed into the New York subway. It's like Koreanness is a weird thing right now, and there's a lot of love for stuff coming out for Korean, and then there's almost neglect of being Asian in America. I think about this of queerness too, Heartstopper is huge right now, and yet we're facing litigation to try to make it not okay to identify a certain way in your gender identity or sexual orientation. And so it's just such a weird time to be other. And so I didn't anticipate or set out to write a book to deal with these things, but because I was dealing with my own stuff. I'm in my 40s, and it wasn't until writing this book 2 years ago did I even ask myself, what it means to be Korean. I had Korean pocketed in my corner of my home, and I was the only female and person of color and executive teams in different companies that I worked at, but that was a role. It wasn't an identity. And so this book helped me, this sounds so big and cliche, but it helped me find myself. And I think that's okay that this happened kind of later in life. I hadn't even been to Korea in over 20 years. And after I wrote this book, I went to Korea. And what I believed Korean to be was very different when I got there. And so maybe I didn't think that this was going to change the world or change me, but it ended up really kind of flipping my life on its head in the best ways. So but it's also super swimmy. So enjoy a little romance, and just know that my life is forever changed for having written it. So I'll ask one more question, and then really cannot see anybody. Here we lean this way, excuse me.
I just want to get closer.
It is like literally, can you guys see the sun like right in my face? No, it's fine. I'm totally fine. I'll just.
There we go, Susan. Shift.
Yeah.
Okay. Also, I'm just here to show off my brand new sunglasses that I bought in Korea. They're gentle monsters. I'm obsessed with them. So that's why I'm sitting in the
You
sun.
look
I'm
very
just kidding. So I do want to ask, I think, and I'm sorry because this is about like Asian women and sass and laughs. So when you guys started writing, I think for Suzanne, maybe it's a little bit more obvious because she came from comedy. But how did you decide kind of what those stories were going to be? And were you worried at all about the general population, not just your kind of identity population, receiving these novels? And because all of you are published already, how has that reception been?
Okay. I thought this was about laugh and sass. You're making me think.
You're a lawyer.
Was. I was kidding about the semi-retired part. I am retired. The reception.
Yeah, reception.
I think that my stories are relatable to anyone, regardless of your background. And that is the whole point, to show that, there are differences that are fun, but when it all comes down to it, every important aspect, almost even like day-to-day lives. I don't wake up in the morning and think, I feel so Korean today, I'm just like, I'm gonna have to pack the lunch for the kids and like get them on their way, and I have to write 1,000 words, and it's just the same for everybody. I want people to see that. I have had some critics or reviewers say that my book is not Asian enough. And what is Asian enough? It's me, and I am Asian, and I am telling you this is reality, this is true, a reflection of who I am, how I was raised. And, just to kind of, I'm going to go off on a tangent and forget what I'm talking about, but I want to say that BTS and K-drama and K-pop, that's Korean. Korean American is a completely separate identity. I am who I am American, and what's popular in Korea and who these people are is different from who I am as a Korean American, and that's what I want to represent in my books, Korean Americans. So yes, I've been told that it's not Asian enough. I guess I don't talk about slanted eyes when I look in the mirror, but seriously, I don't wake up in the morning and look at my eyes and go, they're so almond-shaped. So I just don't. That's not how we think. So sorry if it's not Asian enough, but it's real. It's true. It's a reflection of what Korean American people, and everyone's different, of course, but what being me is like. Welcome to my head. And I've also gotten complaints that I have my characters living in their family homes with their multi-generational, right? Grandparents and parents, and they're like, they have these 20, 30-year-olds living with their parents. That is not normal. And I'm sorry it's not normal, but it is reality. Again, that's how it goes. And these days, I think everyone who goes off to college and comes home realizes that they're smart on saving rent by living with their parents. I think that's just the American reality right now. So reception has been wonderful, support has been wonderful, and I hope that it continues to grow and grow. Thank you.
So I'm going to answer this question talking about writing process first. What I do when I write stories is I actually make the characters first. So I'll do like a character profile and their weaknesses and strengths, and just kind of draw out the character. Sometimes I even put like a family tree to like, represent their families. And I think all that part of like their Asian American identity, I think it just is part of who they are. And so I feel like it should read as like, okay, this is a story about like a Chinese American person and who, stumbles over a dead body and has to figure out like, what happened.
As one does.
As one does, right? So, yeah, right, exactly. So I think, so I'm hoping that that's kind of the reception, like, hey, this is a great mystery, not like, oh, this is a great Chinese American mystery or great Asian mystery. And the reception generally has been really good. Like people, just love the like fun aspects of it, or some people will think it's interesting, like, oh, bubble tea and the night market. I don't really see that setting a lot. So people have enjoyed it. There have been comments, I think, wanting definitions from me. So that's what I found the most. So people will be like, oh, you mentioned this. Like, what is this food? Or you like, whatever, taking shoes off in the house. I don't know, like different things. They'll be like, that's like strange to them. And so I've had questions like that about, oh, can you explain this more? Or what do you mean by this? Or there's like generalization questions where it's like, this is the character and that's like where they come from, but then they'll generalize it to be like, oh, do all like Asian Americans like this? Or like, is this part of is the reason she's acting this way because of her like culture? I'm like, I'm getting the crescendo. Like,
It's because of the mystery aspect.
Yeah, it's like getting the excitement. So yeah, I don't know. So it's been mixed response. I'm gonna pass it to you because it's gonna be quiet now. Okay, so yeah, I'm gonna give you the quieter question.
Sorry, I did that to her.
We are all making jazz.
I know it's great. It's beautiful music over there. Gosh, I didn't even know where to start with this question because each book has gotten different kind of reception. So, in general, I'll put it into kind of two buckets. One is when I published my first debut. It was a young adult. The main protagonist, is a Korean male. Wrote from mostly his point of view, but also was a dual point of view. So I also wrote from his love interest, who is a girl named Kate. She's white, and one of the reviews came in, and it's a trade review. So this is like a professional person hired. Basically, she wrote it from saying that Kate. She didn't understand Kate's motivations, and it was very clear that she thought Kate was the main character. And, my editor and I were just like flabbergasted, right? Because it's like, clearly the book has like, him and like the copy on the book says this, but it didn't matter because she read it as, I want to see myself in the main character. She's female, she's white, and then why did she not get more time in the book? So that like kind of set my expectations forever with publishing. Like that is just going to be a thing that I will not just have to look out for, but just be aware of, so that just to warn other debut authors, or just to kind of know that in the back of my mind, that is sort of how a lot of people's brains are centered. So again, this is a person from like school library journal, so it's not just a random person on Goodreads. The other thing that I find with my own writing is that I like to write about Asian American nerds falling in love. And when you do that, because of who they are and their past experiences, it's going to come with some coming of age. And so a lot of my stories, actually all of my stories, are usually a blend of coming of age stories with romance. And that literally blows people's minds into like little pieces because they can't handle it not being in a bucket. So I blend genres. Any future writing I will do will also blend genres, and I don't really care to be in a bucket. So have fine lines or be put into a box. So that's the other thing that I've noticed, is that if you do want to focus on coming of age or identity or those things, it kind of like they want to see a lot of it or like none of it because they want romance only or something like that. The last thing I'll say is that this particular book, So We Meet Again, it's about Korean culture in that it's a love language about Korean food and Korean culinary experiences. And I have like a recipe in the back of the book, and people just wanted more recipes, more cooking, more Korean food. And I was like, look, this is not a cookbook. I am not like on like, the Food Channel, and this is not like an extension of that. And I think one other Asian American writer said it best. Her name is Sarah Kuhn. She said, like, look, if you want culture, go buy a textbook. And so I think that's really it, is like, I'm not here to talk about like the Asian American immigration experience and how that affects, all these other things, whether it's culinary or people's identity or whatever. It's like you write the stories that you want to write. If they're Korean American or not, you tell the story that you want to tell, and people have different expectations of how it should be portrayed, and then those are the reviews you get. Yay! And that's the real truth. So Susan,
Take it back. I was not a big reader growing up, and you don't hear that from authors. I know a lot of authors talk about, especially YA authors talk about, like having read Babysitter's Club and all that. Sarah does it. I just didn't read, and I think namely because I watched soap operas. I was like a Days of Our Lives, General Hospital, like the 2:00 hour. You know what I'm talking about? And like I made up some crazy ass stories in my head. So I was like, yeah, I had stories, but like I think for books, I just kept thinking that these are all fantasies. No matter what genre it is, it's a fantasy to me because it's not something. I didn't say like I don't see myself on page. It just wasn't accessible to me. It's like, this is your life. That's a fantasy life. You get the high school football quarterback. That's a fantasy life to me, And so I was not a big reader until well into my adulthood, and when I got horny and was reading romance novels all the time. But when I set out to write, I was writing in a very specific time in my life where I had stories to tell that I didn't see out there. And as an aside, just between us, I wrote because I'm petty and someone told me I couldn't. And I'm like, well, I'll show you what I can do. So I had never anticipated writing, but someone's like, you can't do that. I'm like, I'll show you what I can and can't do. But anyways, when I was writing this book, I was writing it because BTS got really big, and I didn't get it at the time. I was like, ew, these guys are not cute. I wish they would not speak English with that heavy accented voice. Like, I literally was like, ew. Like, my mom and I would sit there and pick them apart, and I did not get why anyone was into them. And so I started, like, honestly, I wrote this book to make fun of them. That's what happened. And in that process, like they say, you find BTS when you need them the most. I found myself in a world that was suddenly kind of interested in Korean culture and gochujang and bulgogi. Gochujang, bulgogi, just say. But like people were into it. I saw them on the Food, and I saw Korean food on the Food Network, and I saw BTS on the Today Show, and it was like mind-blowing to me that Korean suddenly was a thing to be into. So so I wrote this book. I don't know how Korean Americans will take this book. I don't know. I have had very, very kind reception thus far, and I think it's because I wasn't setting out to change the world. I just wanted to write a lighthearted romance. So but what is difficult, you've heard from all of us here, I think the hardest thing is we get criticism both internally from our culture and from outside our culture, and that's always going to be the challenge. At the end of the day, I don't want to write K-pop, K-drama books my entire career. I don't. But I also am not a fool, and I want to write books that sell. So I think that's also the challenge, is kind of like, what's next and how we move forward. And with that segue, my last question is, What's next? What are you guys working on next? I'll start so Suzanne doesn't have to boomerang back to me, and then we'll go down and then we'll start opening up for questions. This is spoiler alert because nobody has heard this yet. My next book is called The Name Drop. It's about two Korean teens. One is a chaebol, which means a rich Korean guy, and a girl who comes from a middle class family. And at the LAX airport, they are mistaken because they have the same Korean name. So she ends up in a first class air flight, plane ticket, and he ends up in the middle seat back row. And they both end up in New York, and they're going both to be interns at his father's Korean technology company. He's supposed to be an executive intern. She's supposed to be kind of a peon intern, and they decide to trade places so that she gets an opportunity she would never have and he doesn't have to work for the summer. And hijinks ensue and some smooching, maybe by the Statue of Liberty because I'm cliche like that. And we'll see how it goes because I haven't finished it. I'm on my third deadline extension. So I'll let you know. You guys will know here first, and I will pass it to Jayci.
Okay, so I write sexy books, and
18 and over.
and I would say 16 and over. My Harlequin desire stuff, 18 and over. But I'm Korean American, and I feel like that's a bit taboo. But I wanted to, I read romance, and I started reading when I was 14, Harlequins, and I feel like other Asian American girls and women, and we all read, and we all like a little steam and sexiness, and it shouldn't be taboo. We should be allowed to explore that side of us and like conquer it. But I'm working on a project that's nowhere near anything right now. It's just a book of my heart. I talk about it, I get goosebumps along my arms, and I burst into tears. So I'm going to keep it short. It is a fantasy romance about a Korean American fox spirit, who is 100 years old and out to save the world. And that's all I could say before I start crying. But it's sexy, and it's fun, it's snarky and gritty and not like any of my other books, but that's what I'm working on now.
So I have, thanks, sorry, yeah, booby traffic. But so I have book 2 in this series coming out, the Night Market series. It's called Hot Pot Murder. So there's a sneak peek of it in this book, actually. And basically, yes, there's hot pot, and it's about, it starts off, you already kind of know. So it's a little bit of a spoiler, but there's murder in it. And it's at this hot pot dinner where it's like, they're having hot pot, and then, oh, okay, the hot pot didn't go. Hot. Yeah, I know. Too much hotness there. Not in a good way, like your book. So that's the second book. And then I also have a new series idea. It's out on proposal with my agent, and so it's still cozy mystery, light, with kind of a dash of magical realism to it.
Sorry. Okay. Well, aside from my holiday YA holiday book coming out in October, I'm so excited for that. It's going to be a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun to write too, because it was like the comfort read that I needed, but also just mall hijinks. And then there's Orange Julius and all the food court nods. Yes, hot dog on a stick, Sparrow. I mean, it's got it all. I mean, Foot Locker. It's just pouring out of me this literary genius. The next book I have just got assigned a release date yesterday. So it's April 4th of next year, 2023, which seems far away, but it will come really close, I'm sure. It's called The Do-Over, and it's it's based on a nightmare I have where I always have the dream where I wait, I'm like not in class, but for some reason have to take the final exam and end up like not knowing what I'm doing and have to take it to graduate. And so I had that dream a lot during the pandemic. Has anybody else had that dream? Yeah, a few people. There's different variations of it. Like
It's
you have
literally my college reality, though.
Oh yeah.
Not even a dream.
Yes. So.
We're all cringing here. We're all like, no,
I know.
Asian F, no.
And and I like woke up like many times in the pandemic with this like anxiety, and I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna put in a book proposal and see what happens. So it's called The Do-Over, and it's about a woman who is applying for a high-level executive job, and she through the background check process, once she gets the job, she finds out that she didn't actually graduate. And so she decides to go back to college 10 years later and relive her senior year and finds out at that point that her computer science TA is her ex-college boyfriend. So imagine everything about college that is funny and terrible, and then having to deal with your TA being your ex. So, so it was a lot of fun to write. It's a little bit different than what I normally write in that the heroine is in her 30s, because it's 10 years later after college, and she suffers from imposter syndrome and anxiety. So I'm touching upon mental health in this one, which I haven't done in the past, and then just dealing, again, as I always like to do, with sexism and racism, kind of works its way in. So again, that's coming out in April, and I've never had an April release, so this is very exciting. Add it to your Goodreads.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I'd love to open it up. If you guys have any questions, now is the time. We've had some wine, so maybe we'll spill some secrets. I literally just spilled a secret of my book, too, that I don't even think we've announced, so it's fine. It's totally fine. Do we have any questions from the audience? Make something up, because it's super awkward. Okay. Yes, right there.
First of all, thank you so much for being here, and Joe and her husband for setting this really cool vibe up. But I love when you said you got petty, and that's why you started writing. And I love how you said you mix genres, but all four of you, the way that you are so diverse, and the way, Jayci, you said, yeah, this is about Korean, but I'm Korean American. So that's why I love how y'all do that. Even when you mentioned like Orange Julius, Foot Locker, or talking about certain passages you like to read when you're horny and stuff. I think that's what you share. Just human experiences, but with a little bit of Asian American vibe. Yeah. So I congratulate you. I can't wait. I never ever read a Halloween romance, ever, but I do watch Christmas Hallmark movies. That leads me to my original question. Do any of you see your work as either like a sitcom or a movie or a Broadway musical or anything like that? Because I love how you said BTS can be a portal to Korean stuff, but we're Asian Americans. So I was wondering if you see your stuff on film or on stage, if you will.
Are you offering them? Are you from Hollywood? Call me. I'm just kidding. I will take this because I just had a conversation with a friend about this, and I told you about that Goodreads when that lady asked I'm assuming when a reader asked the question of, I love this book, is there something like it with a heroine who's white? I think the author's dream is to be optioned into like Netflix or a movie, but my dream, honestly, would be to be made into a K-drama, because my books are super over the top, and I take them from K-dramas, like literally, and I think K-dramas are really big right now because they're very tropey. They have escalating conflict with every episode, and they're just so over the top that you can just it's Koreans, we don't love surprises. We love the expected. So in every K-drama, it's going to rain and you're not going to have an umbrella. And someone's going to be hit by a car and like levitating on the top of the, in the air. And like episode 8 is when they finally kiss, and then episode 9 all goes to shit. It's like, I would love to be recognized, and this is my own internal, like, because I kind of shunned being Korean for so long, I'd love to be recognized by Korea. To be honest, that's my own thing. So,
Okay, so Booked on a Feeling is the third book in my rom-com series. It started with A Sweet Mess. I don't know if you guys know Daniel Day Kim. He was in Lost, and I don't have to introduce him. He saw himself as the main character on A Sweet Mess, and he wanted to bring A Sweet Mess to the silver screen. He wanted Asian American representation on the big screen. So, heck yeah, I see my books as films and movies, and I think, like you said, it's a human story, and I think that's what we want to get across. Will come to you, and there'll be Korean American aspects, because our culture is different. We do take our shoes off, and I have a rice cooker that talks. That says cuckoo, and that's a must for Koreans. But
Those things are expensive.
housewarming present, splurge from
Those are
mama.
not cheap.
But overall, Daniel had the same vision, and we totally connected about how we have to be able to present the Korean American diaspora as part of the fabric of America, and that's what we would like to see happen on screen. So fingers crossed.
Anyone else?
I don't have an option, but I just want to say usually cozy mysteries actually come out as series. That tends to be what happens. And interesting that you say Hallmark, because Hallmark does do like mysteries, and sometimes they even ask for mysteries, cozy mysteries, to develop, to turn into something that they can use for the Hallmark channel. But I would love to be optioned for anything.
Yes, if anybody knows anybody, we're all very willing to talk about this. Yes, everybody. I have one book, Sunny Song Will Never Be Famous, that caught the interest of an actor who has a production company. His name is Will Yun Lee, and he's on The Good Doctor. So he and his production company are sort of working through a bunch of stuff, but they've attached like a Chinese American writer, and they have a maybe director type person, and they're just trying to package it up. So hopefully something will one day happen. So on the ladder of Hollywood, we're at like 1%, but hopefully something will happen. The other thing is sort of, what do you do about representation? Because I think that is one thing that while there is a lot of eagerness and hunger for diverse stories on, different streaming networks like, Netflix and Prime, Amazon Video, they also have to come with the right casting and the right vision and things. So I think as they figure it out, I think hopefully it'll all like work out for other authors and other creators' favors. As far as how do I see things, I think my workplace comedies lend itself to TV series, just because there can, like The Office, it could probably, I don't know if anybody's seen Mythic Quest, but that is hilarious, and it is a lot like my book, Loathe at First Sight. So I think I could totally see it because of these other shows that exist. And then I think my young adult books, I believe those seem like very streaming movie type of medium.
I think what's
interesting is, as I mentioned, like Jayci and I just met a few years ago, there were no Korean stories out there at the time. Like even when I got my audiobook narrator recommendations or auditions, there's literally 2 guys and 2 girls, and they read all of Suzanne's books. I mean, there's just not a lot out there. Like even Hollywood is waiting. And a funny story, which I still call my biggest flex, but it deals with Daniel Dae Kim, is like my Korean friends and I personally don't find Daniel Dae Kim that handsome. He's not here, right? Okay, just to make sure. So my friend, writer Sonali Dev, she is an Indian American. She had said something on Twitter about how she didn't find Dev Patel that handsome. And why does everyone find him so handsome? So I jump in, I'm like, he's freaking hot, but let me just tell you, my friends don't find Daniel Dae Kim that handsome, my Korean friends. She's like, he's freaking hot. And then a Chinese writer wrote in and she's like, that's funny because my Chinese friends don't find Simu Liu that handsome. Simu Liu jumps in, he says, I hear I'm an acquired taste. So this is my biggest flex to this day, is that Simu Liu jumped into our conversation about handsomeness. And now one day we'll be best friends, and it's fun. We have maybe time for one more question. If not, otherwise we're going to open up to signing. Yes.
First of all, I just want to say thank you so much for tonight and for you guys sharing your stories. As someone who is
Congratulations!
But like, what is your advice in terms of like rejections and like how many rejections is normal, or like, you know, were you kind of just like, okay, you know what, just keep trying, just keep going, you know, because I know it's different for everybody, but what would you like? I guess what I'm saying is like, how do you like stick with it? Like, how do you like don't give up and keep trying?
I will answer from a perspective of BIPOC creators specifically. I think the hard thing is there's a lot of advice out there, and the advice is often see who represents the kind of author that you like. I did that, and I had agents actually tell me, probably accidentally, they meant to say we have works that are already like that on our list, but they said we have writers like that on our list. So we want to believe that a rising tide raises all boats, but I think publishing has not proven itself reliable in a real effort for diversity. And I think not one of us here, and I'm gonna like include Elise in this, I don't think any of us believe we weren't lucky. We're also lucky and had books that could be commercial, and it was all about timing. And that's the hard thing about publishing, is they're not setting out to, right now we're still other, we're still different. So my best advice to you is, oh God, that just like really set it up as this is really tragic, is to just go for it. Go for it. Believe in your book. I don't know that there's any correct number of rejections. I'm actually on my second agent, so you know, I don't think there's any right or wrong way to do this. But I think more than anything, I think because we oftentimes doubt our skill, is believe in the need for your stories to be out there. And then I think that is like, whether it's this story, the next one you have to write, whatever, just keep going, because our stories are needed. There's 4 of us on this panel, there should be 20 of us on this panel, you know, so.
I think I'm hoping this is the beginning of the revolution. You know, we are merely starting the movement, and we want more to join our ranks. And us here, I'm sure everyone will agree, we'll do everything in our power to support those who come after us. So keep trying, don't give up, laugh at rejections, you know, cry first, and then just roll with the punches. Rejections are gonna come, and even, you know, this is my 8th book, and I still deal with rejections or thoughts about maybe not that Korean culture fits, and maybe you want to try a different Korean culture. I mean, it's gonna keep happening, but just keep trying, don't give up, persevere.
Same thing, just keep on writing. I think it takes a long time sometimes, and to make sure you just believe in the stories, and if you love writing, just continue to do it. The other thing I would say is to find a community, So if you have like a writing group, a critique group, even online, like I'm part of Sisters in Crime. I'm part of Crime Writers of Color, which is helpful because there are obstacles that BIPOC people face that are different, and just have that support because there will be ups and downs, and it just may take. It's kind of like lucky. Like we don't know the timing. How long will it take? I mean, I have a binder full of rejections, right? And like I started when I had to mail them out, to wait for the self-addressed stamped envelope, which usually was just like a little slip of paper. Sometimes they would write something if they were nice. Other times it was just like this random piece of paper, or even like sometimes they just like cut a snippet of the manuscript and send it back, and there's like nothing, nothing on it. And I'm like, oh, I guess that's a rejection.
Echo everything that they said. Definitely just keep writing and just keep trying. Speaking of timing, your timing is perfect in that I just finished an Instagram live series last month about with 4 different authors who are now authors or have books coming out soon to be authors, and about their journeys toward publication. So it's 4 authors with 4 very different paths to publication, from either a lot of rejections on the querying side or a lot of rejections on the actual trying to sell the book side. So if anybody else is interested, it's on my Instagram, not Reels, the other one, the video one. I also have a blog post that just links to those things. So if you can't find me on Instagram, that's how you can find me, SuzannePark.com. Or you can also buy my books. The other thing is that I actually started out querying in 2012 with a collection of personal essays. Thinking, again, from stand-up comedy, I was like, oh, I'll just write personal essays. I took a bunch of classes, and I got a lot of rejections. But the one, it's like, if you have some rejections that actually give you good feedback, it's important to kind of sift through all that to see if it's useful. And somebody had written me back with a very long, detailed response, which was, very not very common for an agent to give you that much kind of like specialized attention. And she basically said that right now, at that time, personal essay collections weren't selling. It was just like kind of slowly dying down, unless you were famous. And so she suggested that I turn that into fiction, maybe fictionalize some of my stories, and that's sort of how I ended up where I am now. So I figured that would be easier than trying to figure out how to be famous. So that's sort of, so that's the bottom line. Either be famous or, just keep trying.
Awesome. Thank you. I think we're going to take pictures first, or do you want to sign first?
Pictures.
Okay.
For remembering,
Yes.
because I had already
I
forgotten
was
all about
listening.
that. I was all like, I'm enjoying my wine.
Thank you again to all 4 of our authors. That was a fantastic conversation. I was just like super enjoying that, and I really just appreciate like the mix of humor and sexiness, and telling real truths, because you're looking at a panel of highly successful authors. I mean, this is like incredible. Oh, stop. Really? 8 books? 8 books. Let me just say that again. 8 books. I don't have a book. Do you have a book? I don't have one. So that is just like so inspirational and so motivational to all of us, that it's never too late. And if it's something that you believe in, just keep trying, because I think that's the same. I mean, it's the same with our bookstore journey. If it's something that you really believe in, you will hopefully find a way to make it happen. And I think also the importance of finding your people, finding your fellow writers, finding your fellow creatives to help you along. So thank you all so much for being here. That concludes our portion of the evening. We will now do the book signing. So if you want to come up and get your book signed, if you still want to shop, we still have books available in the store. The store is still open for a little bit longer. If you need now you're done, now we can have wine, or whatever you like. And thank you again. We will have one more virtual event tomorrow with Elaine Castillo. I can never say her name right, and Gina Apostol, so two tremendous Filipino-American writers. That's going to be a virtual event with Loyalty Bookstores in DC. And then we'll take a little break because we're going on vacation again. But we will be back in August with some amazing authors, Belinda Huijin Tang, Marie Myung-ok Lee, and Jeff Yang with the Rise Asian American book. So just take a look. We're on belcantobooks.net. If you follow us on Instagram, you'll find out all the details. But thank you so much for being here, and please come and say hello to the authors.